This, can we come back to what the important questions that people asked were and answering those? So I'm going to hand over to Caroline to bring some of the things together.
There's someone who's just leaving who I know has been desperately trying to raise a question at the back there. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a valid question because it has been, the point was raised not just by Chris but earlier. Yeah, but I wanted to come back on a few of those questions, a few of the points that came up. Sorry.
No.
I just want to come back on a few of the points that came up. One was about the health, coming back to Brian's point, and yeah, thank you very much, Brian, for all you've done about the Health and Overview Scrutiny Committee. And to pick up on we've talked a bit about writing to people. What we should have also said, Chris is absolutely right when he says that it's not just about writing, it's about getting in front of people. The HOSC meetings, the council meetings, the board meetings of all these NHS bodies, they are all public meetings. And you can all go to these meetings, you can try and find out how questions can be answered at them. We'll try and get some information on that. And I'd really encourage people to do that. Also to go to other meetings, any meetings really, even if they're stuffed full of, I shouldn't say this, but if they're stuffed full of Gloucestershire Tories, you know, stand up and say, I did this at a meeting recently, and actually just say, tell people what's happening and ask what people are doing about it, what people are doing to keep these services in the NHS. So that's one thing I wanted to say. And also I just wanted to pick up on the point down here from the colleagues from the Forest of Dean about the county-wide campaign. One of the reasons we've circulated on the paper, we've asked for where you're from. What we will do is contact people who we notice are from the same areas and check. We won't do this without asking you, but we'll check if you're okay for those emails to be shared and those contact details to be shared, although obviously I hope people might have a chat after the meeting as well. I think that was all I wanted to say actually.
Okay. Yeah, I just on the issue of civil disobedience, because I've not made that call myself, but I've mentioned that there are people making that call, and I think that's something that we should do. So I'll answer that, and maybe if Chris wants to come back very briefly on what he meant by it, and then we'll do another round of questions. I'm quite happy to be loose about what I mean about it at the moment. I saw this thing about the Block the Bill builders. I think that's very interesting. I think the BBC has been pretty awful, and the media generally have been pretty awful about explaining what this bill is about. And the main thing that they've completely ignored is this issue of the fact that the bill was essentially drafted by private sector companies, McKinsey and McKellen, I think the other one is called, that the huge financial interests that many Lords and MPs have in the bill passing, the great benefits that will return to them personally, although not to the rest of us. You know, these are really crucial issues, and I think the best way of making that clear is by, in whatever way appears most useful, disrupting those companies and those organisations. And I think that's been very successful in terms of UK Uncut, raising the issue of tax avoidance, and more recently boycott workfare in forcing companies to drop out of that scheme before the government even talked about it. If we can force the private health companies to think, do we really want this bill to go through if we're going to face a massive wave of protest? You know, that's a question that we can ask. But there's other forms of civil disobedience as well, but I think that's one. The other is, you know, maybe blocking Parliament on the day the vote's supposed to happen. You know, it's very short notice to be organising something like that, but I basically wouldn't rule almost anything. I wouldn't rule out, you know, that we're doing non-violently with our bodies to stop things. I don't know if Chris wants to explain very briefly what he meant by it.
The reason I was saying what I was trying to as well was because it's, you know, what is going to be needed to save the NHS. That's what this is about. It's what kind of action we're going to take. For instance, I would say that there will probably need to be industrial action. I think that the unions, you know, really, to build up, to try and, would need a campaign to build confidence amongst NHS staff and so on. But it can be a very effective weapon. and it's what is actually going to be needed. And it isn't something that anyone would take lightly. It's not a light decision by anybody. But we've seen health workers who had to do it to defend their pensions. And we might have to see it in the future as well. And I think if that has to happen, we should support it. So that would be some action, for instance, I think. It can have an effect. If we're talking about trying to save our NHS, there might be action which we don't, wouldn't want to take normally, but we're forced into that situation. I think other things like, yes, it could be like occupying the county hall as well, Shire Hall if we needed to, when they're discussing issues. Things that those kind of things can be taken that make a bit of a, that people take a bit of notice of, if you want. Those kind of actions can be taken, and I think alongside the building of trying to put pressure to build for a national campaign. And I would say here, anyone who is a trade union member or is a member of their trade union, contact your reps, contact your branches, ask them what they're doing, ask them to try and discuss the idea. First of all, putting pressure on these NHS managers to make sure that they really look at the NHS options in terms of social enterprise, but also to discuss what else are you doing to defend our NHS.
Chris, can I stop you there, Chris?
Yeah, sorry.
So we had various other hands. Unfortunately, I think some of the people might have had to leave, but can I take a few hands and we'll do another round? So I think, this is... Okay, so I've got 5, 6, and that'll be 7. I think that'll be it, yeah? And I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to remember all those, so just if you can just be nice to each other, take turns by where you're closest for the... Ian, who we're very grateful for wandering around with the roving mic. So if we start at the back... Oh, we've got this one here. Okay. So just beforehand, I want to limit it to those 7 people who put their hands up now, just because I'd really like us to spend some time together where we're not on the platform, where we can just get together and have a little more informal chats. Perhaps if we could have people in one corner who are county-wide, would like to talk a little bit about county-wide stuff, and then perhaps after they've had a quarter of an hour, if you're interested in doing stuff this weekend in Stroud, if you want to also meet up there. It would be really great if those of you can stay, also just stay. The bar will be open so that we can have a bit of a celebration, as I mentioned earlier, because we're getting a bit away from that now. So, questions, sorry.
Hello. It's more a comment really about need to scrutinise PCT, or the body it's going to morph into, because there's been a lot of secrecy, and it could continue if we allow it to. So it really needs a lot of detailed coordination work. And apart from you two, or 3 or 4 people, so actually, how can we actually scrutinise these PCT members to ensure they actually adhere to the court order? Because number 4 on your list is really important. They will make the decision. They will reconsider. How will they reconsider? How transparent will it be? And how publicly accountable will it be? That's really all I want to say.
Great question. So I'll get Caroline to answer in that a second, but I'll take a few more. So, gentleman at the back.
Yeah, no doubt as we speak tonight, there'll be probably half a dozen public, well-supported public meetings going on in the Republic of Ireland, not on this issue, but against household tax charges, where there's been a virtual revolt of people that are going to refuse to pay these charges that, like the cuts we're facing, proceeds going straight into the pockets of the bankers. The point I wanted to make is that if you'd have asked people in the Republic last year, they'd have said, well, it's a bad situation we're in, but we don't really think anything can happen. And then all of a sudden, the straw came that broke the camel's back. And it looks like maybe the government will have to retreat on this issue. Now, that proves that something can be done, and that a mood will break at some stage. So I think we ought to be encouraged. Yes, there'll be disagreements in the movement, of course there will, but they ought to be debated in a fraternal way. But people really must be judged by what they say and what they do. And I'll leave you just with this comment, which I'll share with you. No socialist MP in the Republic of Ireland has ever voted for private health care. Thank you.